So, D&D is becoming essentially mainstream now. What do you think why did that happen? Is it good for D&D?
That's opinions vary on that. I'm of the camp. I think it's wonderful.
Mm-hmm.
I think the more people that get into the hobby, the better. I think the more diverse the hobby becomes, the better. The more different voices that enter the hobby, the better. Because then it just feeds creativity. We'll have much more interesting product. I think it's nothing but good.
So when you look at with Sea King's Malice, you partnered with Beetle and Grimm's.
Yeah, those
How
guys
did
are
that
good.
come about?
Yeah, those guys. It's Bill Rohr, Charlie Rohr, Matt Lillard, great group of guys. They came to Gamehole Con last year as vendors, and they had a great time. Liked the show. We're going to come back every year, all that kind of stuff. And I think they got wind that I was doing a book, and I think one of the guys just made an offhanded comment, "Hey, good luck with your book." I said, "Hey, you guys do these awesome sets. Mm-hmm. Is there anything that you'd be interested in doing with me in my book?" And said, "Well, we could talk about it. We could do maybe some monster cards, or..." And after several conversations, it came to the point of if you guys have seen, the Waterdeep set was their first set, which was a great set. But the problem was you can only play it for that adventure, and then there's some parts you can use. But it's not evergreen. You've got 3 different ships in your book, Sea King's Malice, that have different hull shapes, hull configurations. What we can do is we can do the maps for those 3, on one side specific to your adventure, but on the other side generic, and they're all wipe off, so they're evergreen. So people can buy these, and then you have ship maps for whatever. Mm-hmm. And that appealed to them, and they got on board, and here we are. I can't wait to get them. Charlie just sent me the final art on their version of the maps, and it looks brilliant. Oh, it's beautiful. So I can't wait.
Fantastic.
I actually backed my own Kickstarter to make sure I get a set.
Hey, that's good.
So, D&D is becoming essentially mainstream now. What do you think why did that happen? Is it good for D&D?
That's opinions vary on that. I'm of the camp. I think it's wonderful. Mm-hmm. I think the more people that get into the hobby, the better. I think the more diverse the hobby becomes, the better. The more different voices that enter the hobby, the better. Because then it just feeds creativity. We'll have much more interesting product. I think it's nothing but good. D&D has been instrumental in, if you want to call my life successful, well, that's been a big part of it. It got me into reading. Made me a reader at an early age. So I did well on standardized tests. Law school was not easy for me, but a lot easier for me. I wasn't. It gave a real focus for my nerdy self. Mm-hmm. So I think it became why it's exploded as much as it has. And I don't mean to name drop here, but this is about 5 years ago. I was sitting in San Antonio, having a margarita with Chris Perkins on the Riverwalk, and he was there at PAX South for his Acquisitions Incorporated game. I was there for Chew Dungeon, and so we said, let's have lunch. Chris has come to every one of the every one of the shows, every Gamehole Con. He's always come, which is great. He's such a good guy. And we were talking about that exact concept, and I was telling him, man, I can't believe you're going to pack a theater with 3,000 people to watch a live D&D game. That just blows my mind, man. You want to watch someone else play D&D? He goes, yeah, it's wild. I can't believe it too. Chris and I are about the same age, Mm-hmm. He told me that we wizards have good data that suggest, now this is about 5 or 6 years ago, that we've crossed the tipping point where more people are entering the hobby because they saw someone play the game on YouTube, as opposed to the way that we all got into it, which is we had a buddy mm-hmm. who had the books and wanted to play and say, hey, you should come play this game. Historically, that's how everyone got into the hobby. You knew someone and said, hey, come over and play D&D. Now, people who have never had any contact with the hobby, never played D&D, see Matt Mercer running a game. Mm-hmm. Thought, I want to play that. That looks mm-hmm. awesome. They see Chris Perkins' game. I want to be a player in that game, or I want to run that game, and it's just exploded. So I think that's it. I think and also with the backdrop of a very, again, I'm totally pimping here, but with a very accessible rule set. Mm-hmm. 5th edition D&D is a
Yeah.
really great, easy one to walk into.
Yeah.
It's lower on crunch, it's friendly, and so I mean, my kids play it. So I think that's why.
Mm. So do you think it was essentially just the invention of YouTube that was responsible for D&D becoming mainstream, or what was there one date, time, thing, event that in your mind is like, nope, this is it.
Yeah.
This is now when we cross the line. This is now when it's mainstream.
It's probably, I think, yeah, boy, I wish I could pick a time, but the explosion of Critical Role, real recognizable celebrities saying, not only am I a D&D player, I love D&D, and this is a hill I'll die on.
Yeah.
And that was unthinkable. I mean, just think of 20 years ago. There's no one who would do that. It's like being outed.
Yeah.
Back, no one voluntarily come forward and sit on a late night talk show and talk about how much they love D&D, which you see all the time now.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I think it's a confluence of a bunch of things. I think undergirding it is we had the rise of Harry Potter. So we have an entire generation who grew up on things that, dragons and fairies and magic. That's all mainstream stuff. And so you have that backdrop, a new rule set of D&D. A lot of us older players who are playing and trying to encourage people to play. The explosion of online gaming. The ability to play online with strangers with Roll20 and things like that, so you don't have to have a game hole to play D&D.
Yeah.
You can stop into a store, you can sit in front of a PC and play. All those things have just been fertile ground for the explosion of this hobby.
So a lot of people got into D&D, or they started with board games.
Mhm.
Board games have been around for far longer than D&D has been around.
Sure.
So what was your first board game? What first got you excited about playing a game?
Yeah. My first board game ever was the game Sorry. Played with my family. And that didn't really get me excited about gaming. That one was. That was more of, because everyone's got mad at each other at the, especially my mom. She was super pissed always when someone, bumped off one of her meeples. I'm not sure. Let's break out Sorry. I'm like, It was Risk, I think, was the first game where I thought, all right, this one has some stuff going on here that you got to think about, some strategy. It's also long lasting. I mean, it's one of those games you sometimes have to just put aside and come back to. That's when I started thinking, this is pretty good. It's more than just Chutes and Ladders or whatever.
Yeah.
That's, for me, that was the game that got me going on board games for sure.
Then you remember your first D&D experience, that very first time you sat at a table with that first rule book. This is amazing.
I saw my neighbor, who was an antique collector. I lived in rural Wisconsin, so he was kind of down the road a bit, across this road. He was an antique collector, and he bought what I know now is the Holmes edition of D&D Basic. And he had it, and he was describing it to us kids because he thought that we'd dig it. And he said, it's a little complicated. You have to decide if you're going to be an elf or a dwarf, and I'm not sure if it's... And I was probably 9 at the time. I thought, oh, that sounds neat, but I don't really get it. Then a couple years later, I played... just like everyone else, I had a friend who was a slightly bigger nerd than me, who got the Metzner set, the basic set that most people got into, and we played... the Keep on the Borderlands in my 7th grade cafeteria over the lunch hour. He ran it for me, of course, terribly. At the time, I couldn't believe it. And I was the PC, and I was in the Keep on the Borderlands, trying to that's where I first played D&D. It was the first time. He was telling me about this keep that I'm in. So yeah.
All right, good. You want to go? Or?
No, I mean this hit most of the hot buttons for me. Like that's always one of my things, is how you cross that threshold. Like, because I grew up and I wasn't allowed to play D&D because
Really?
my parents were very much, they had heard about,
That's
the
interesting.
80s scare, and so I wasn't allowed, and it wasn't until much later that I had some friends that, were all into D&D and played, and, and they told me all these crazy stories, and I was like, how is there a game where you can do all this stuff? Because I played video games, I played Atari, GameCube, all that stuff, I'm like, but this doesn't...
Well, that's interesting, the thought, and this is not distant history, that video games were going to kill D&D, right? Like, oh, no one's going to play this game anymore because you can play... This is when WoW was out and stuff. Why would you play play D&D anymore. And that's really the genesis behind 4th edition D&D, is that they got marching orders, they being Mike Merles and company, to make it play more like a video game. And that's why so many of us didn't like it. You know,
Right.
this is sort of the rule set that is most commonly criticized, because that was that fear, is that we need to stay relevant. And this has been part of, what Grant was asking me earlier about this renaissance in gaming. There's been an epiphany, I think so many people have had, that, getting together and sitting down at a table and having the shared experience is a magic that you cannot create in any other way.
And I know also, or I don't know if you've heard, but I read a lot about the hobby in general. And one of the things I read about was that the memories we make when we're playing D&D are stored in essentially the same place as any other long-term memories. So we'll remember things we did or happened in D&D just like we remember falling off our bike when we were a kid.
Sure.
And they help to teach those valuable lessons. Like, so when you're talking about 5th edition and its accessibility and stuff, that gets me excited, because that's the way I feel about it, because I got started with 4th, and so many of the guys that, have been telling me these stories and stuff, they come from 3.5 or 2nd edition.
Sure.
And they were used to that free form, open, and I'm trying to play 4th, and it had that closed off, like you were saying.
Yeah, I get it. I mean, the rule set as designed worked well, as it was designed to work. It just didn't work how we wanted it to work. But your point on memory is well taken. My group, the Gamehole, have been together for so long that we've played years of 1st edition, and then in the 2nd edition 1, 2, they're basically interchangeable for us, and then a lot of 3.5, and then some Pathfinder, and now 5e. But because we've played together for so long, people often ask us, why don't you stream your games? And first of all, we'd have to probably husband our language more than we really want to, one, and two, there's so much nonsensical, inside joke upon inside joke from so many years of playing together that it wouldn't even make sense to an observer,
Right.
And so it's, but that's exactly why, because you have such a long memory of it all, that those experiences, especially with the same players over and over again, they're not isolated, they're not siloed, it's more of a pyramid,
They kind of stack one top of the other.
Yeah, exactly.
Every gamer has got 1,000 billion dice, give or take. Do you have your lucky set, your lucky D20, that one that it's like, this one's gonna crit for me?
I don't have a lucky die. For years I had a belief, that's not, just a habit of thinking, all right, dice only have a useful shelf life about 8 months, and then they're just going to betray you. So it's time to divest myself of those and then buy a new set. So what I'd go, usually Gen Con would be the annual pilgrimage to buy new dice, and I'd go to the Chessex booth and say, tell me everything new you got, give me one set of each. All right, bang, I'm set for the year, and off I go. So no, I don't have a lucky set, but I've got a bunch of favorites I like. And what's neat is that so many people, I mean, you're kind enough to give me a set of the Kraken dice, there's so many players now making dice, that there's so many cool dice out there now. It's unbelievable, the array of colors and sizes and the materials. Like, do you want ones that are high action or low action? So yeah, this is just like everything else. This is the golden age of dice, as it is with board games and RPGs and everything. It's crazy.
So what's your favorite character that you've created? Do you even have one favorite, or are there kind of a couple that are pretty memorable for you?
Yeah, there are several. When I was a freshman in college, I had a ranger that I named Morningwood. That was a favorite one. It was so childish, so childish. That's why I always stand. I'm like, I really shouldn't answer this question. I'm just going to reveal myself for the juvenile that I am. I've been really into, I guess you play long enough that at this point, I'll play a sentient spoon, right? I don't really care, Right. I'm the opposite of a power gamer these days, So I like, I have a couple characters I played recently that are sort of follow the same lines, where they front like they're something, but they're really not. Like, I've had a couple bards who pretended to be clerics, like grifters that are trying to, stuff like that. Things like that are the characters who are not who are, there's more to them.
Yeah.
than what they appear.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly. And that's when I've had plenty. I'm a fighter, and all that kind of stuff, and that's great too. But so now it's all this weird nuance. In fact, I find that the more defective a character is, the more fun it is to play. And recently, I've taken to I think where my most recent character sheet is. Yeah, it's right here. Yes, random. Full random. I pulled the full random lever on D&D Beyond, and this is how I'm going to create characters from now on. Random name, random class, random stats, and it's completely not optimized, and it's absolutely silly. Like this is a paladin. This is a turtle paladin. That's supposed to be a charisma-based paladin, by the setup, but it's a 9 charisma. It's a terrible character.
Yes.
But it's really fun to play.
Right.
So. Yeah, that's.